Hey everybody, it's Jeff. Here's a recap of what I did today on Workbench, where I stream my open source innovation work. So today we came back to qmux, which is a protocol C library and native JavaScript library for multiplexed streams. You can see the spec here. This is all in the prototypes repository on my GitHub. Specifically, I wanted to finish up this JavaScript library that's under Node, even though it's not just Node. Anyway, it needed a WebSocket session transport that works in Node and the browser. So the session transport stuff was not that hard, and actually I put it all in the same file. So we had a TCP connection transport, and then we made a WebSocket one that basically defines the same interfaces, so we can just kind of like drop them in. And I'd planned to use a different WebSocket library, this one WS. I had always used a different one, but I was halfway implemented using this one, so I just went with it. The browser version was nearly identical, just because their APIs were so similar, except there's none of the listener stuff, since you're not going to be able to run a server in the browser. The real trick today was figuring out how to compile and package this up for both Node and the browser. TypeScript added an extra layer of configuration. I used to write libraries that would work for both the browser and Node by exposing the API differently depending on whether a browser was detected. Like, do you see window, then put it on window, otherwise do module exports or whatever. But this project is a little bit more complex because it has its own like internal requires, as well as TypeScript sort of having its own import-export stuff that needs to be right. So I ended up having this core qmux file, which is, you know, the main qmux implementation, and then a file for Node and a file for the browser that have their respective implementations, as well as kind of re-exposing stuff. We'll kind of get into that. So for the Node one, we just point to that as our main in the package, and then for the browser, we use Browserify and Uglify to package it up into a bundle that we can distribute and give to the browser. This also forced me to clean up the directory structure a bit. We have demos in here and dist and source and all that. I thought it was kind of interesting though that Browserify only wanted to export the last of multiple files. So I guess it just takes the last one and uses those exports as what it's gonna put in the browser as a namespace. So we ended up just kind of re-exporting session and channel from the core library there, and then they're exposed in the browser like that. And then since we use the Node's buffer class quite a bit, I ended up also packaging in a tiny buffer implementation that was made for the browser, and I re-export this here too, since that's expected to be used by users. So we can kind of see some new demos now. These are a little bit cleaned up, and you might have seen these before, but here they are, kind of nice. And they're all basically just saying, here's a server, and it's gonna wait for a connection, and when it gets a connection, it's gonna open up a channel on that connection to the other end, and then it's going to basically just sit there and read one byte at a time and then echo that out. And if it gets EOF, it says EOF. Our client connects to it, waits for the other end to open a channel, and then when we have that channel, we basically write hello world for some reason over a couple of writes, and then we read 11 bytes, which would be hello world, and then we print it out. we close. So that's what all of these things are doing. We'll start with the TCP one, which is what we're looking at. So it works okay. The WebSocket one pretty much looks identical. In fact, the only difference I'm pretty sure is that it's saying dial WebSocket and listen WebSocket instead of TCP. So that works. And then the interesting one is, again, in the browser we can't run a server, so we run basically half of this in Node here. So we'll run browser server, and let's see if this is still running. Then we can go open this, which does nothing but print to the console, hello web browser, because that's all it's doing. So here it is using it in the browser. We just have one nice little include. We say dial WebSocket. We don't even use the WebSocket API, again, because all of the qmux stuff is sort of working with a different API interface, which feels a lot like Go. You know, if you're using async await in JavaScript and add TypeScript, and it feels like you can write stuff a little bit more like Go. So the APIs make a little bit more sense like this. So anyway, yep, does the same thing, just writes out. We're using our buffer that we got here, right? Hello web browser, just a little bit longer, and then we echo that out, and the server got it, and then afterwards it got EOF, so it shut down. So I think the next thing on the Q project series, you know, there's qmux and qrpc and some others that aren't really developed yet. We'll try to get qrpc working in the browser, and then we'll be cooking. So also explore how we can get qmux and qrpc to work in a JXA environment, which might be a little bit easier now that I have this like pipeline stuff set up. I can create a JXA version or something. Anyway, that's it for now. Let me know what you think in the comments. Like and then subscribe if you want to follow along. That's it. Thanks for watching.